Okay, we have 9 people, attendees that are currently watching, so now 10. I feel that you probably could get started at least, and they could join when they feel like it.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, good evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and welcome to this special planning committee meeting on Wednesday, March 17th. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand up with me and join me. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please sit. Natalie, could you call roll, please?
Commissioner Allison?
Here.
Commissioner Lord?
Here.
Commissioner May?
Here.
Chairperson Simpson?
Here.
And Mr. Allred is not in attendance.
Thank you, Natalie. Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. I know we have a lot of people standing by, but this is the time set aside for anyone wishing to address the Planning Commission on items not listed in any other place on this agenda. California law does not allow the Planning Commission to take action in response to your statements at this meeting, but your concerns may be referred to staff or set for a hearing at a later date. Let's go ahead and give it a few seconds here, Eric. Let us know if you have anything come across. And while you're waiting, I just want to let everybody know that any public comments need to go to planning@cityoflaverne.org. That's planning@cityoflaverne.org.
And to provide their phone number as well, so we could call them if they like.
And I'll readdress that as we get into the agenda.
We do have a couple of hands raised on those attending the Zoom meeting, so I just want to be clear, Danita and Patty, if you want to, I know you want to comment on the project, but if this is not on the project, so please lower your hand unless you want to speak on another item that's not on the agenda.
Correct. Yeah, this is a time we'll get to the agenda next for the item. This is just for something that has outside what we're talking about today.
Okay. So Danita lowered her hand, but now Ms. Gaddis raised her hand. Ms. Gaddis, just want to confirm, I'm going to allow you to talk. Hi, Sue. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you would like to speak on something not related to this project, correct?
No, I lowered my hand. Mine is on the project.
Okay, it's still raised. I'm gonna send you back. Okay. So it doesn't appear that we have anybody that would like to speak under public comment.
Understood. Okay. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move on to the continued public hearing. Continued public hearing is case numbers 20-20ZC, 109-20SP, 1920 GPA, and 18-20 TTM, resolution 1270. And for this, I want to go ahead and see if Eric, if there's anything other than the comments towards public comments that you'd like to add.
Nothing really to add. Obviously, you received several emails, including up till about a half hour ago that we received. Candace is going to go over what's happened since your last meeting, and then we're here for any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Candace?
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairperson and Planning Commissioners. I gave the very detailed presentation regarding the proposed 42 new homes at 2820 Amherst, the explanation of the process, and I discussed the various studies that were completed at the previous Planning Commission meeting on February 24th. So I won't be presenting the details of the project again, but I will inform you of what has happened since that meeting. After my update, the applicant is here and he has a short presentation, and then Rincon will explain the traffic study in a little bit more detail. At the Planning Commission meeting in February, the Planning Commission voted to continue the item to this meeting to allow staff ample time to conduct a neighborhood workshop. Staff held the virtual neighborhood workshop on March 9th. 173 notices were mailed out to the adjacent neighborhood, inviting them to attend. Staff received 24 requests to participate in the virtual neighborhood workshop on Zoom, with 15 of the 24 people actually logging on. 4 additional people requested that staff call them for their comments during the meeting. And during the 3.5-hour-long meeting, staff, the applicant, and the environmental consultant and the traffic expert all presented information regarding the project and the various studies that had been conducted over the past year. Staff listened to the public's concerns and answered the questions that were given to the best of our ability. The request from the applicant remains the same. However, some residents raised some concerns regarding barbecues and dog waste receptacles in the public park area. The applicant responded that he is open to making changes to that area. However, the park site plan and landscape plan is not part of this approval for tonight. The landscape and design of the park, including its amenities, will be submitted at a later date and be reviewed by staff and the landscape architect at that time. Another comment that was made a couple times during the neighborhood meeting was that a traffic study was needed. Staff wants the Planning Commission to be aware that an accurate and acceptable traffic study was completed for this project. The traffic count numbers from 2011 and new traffic counts were taken at multiple locations and adjusted to non-COVID standards in the most conservative way. The data used is in no way outdated. The city's traffic engineer reviewed the document and agreed that it is accurate. Cody Howing, the deputy city engineer, and John Lovely, the city's traffic engineer, are both at tonight's meeting in case you have any questions of them. There were also about 20 additional emails received for public comment. These were all emailed to you before the meeting. Many of them were just reiterating some similar comments by the same people who had commented previously. With that, the recommendation remains the same as it was previously. So after the next presentations and listening to the public comments, staff and the Development Review Committee recommend approval to the City Council for case numbers 18-20 TTM, 20-20 ZCC, 109-20 SP, and 19-20 GPA, with the adoption of resolution number 1720 based on this staff report and the attached conditions of approval. I'm available from staff if you have any questions. And now we will be moving on to the applicant's presentation, if that's okay with you guys.
Thank you, Candace. Yeah, I believe everybody would like to hear what Matt has to say. So please, let's proceed.
I'm going to screen share, so let's see.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Eric. Good evening, members of the commission. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I first want to start off by saying thank you to the Planning Commission for organizing and continuing the project for us to go back and have the virtual meeting with the neighborhood. I want to say without question, the neighbors that participated in the Zoom were passionate and they were very straightforward with their concerns, but most importantly, I felt that everybody was really respectful to one another. And I think in today's day and age, I think sometimes that gets lost. And I don't think it's highlighted when it happens. And so I wanted to point out that I am very appreciative of the neighbors' participation and the way in which they conduct themselves. We were able to have a back and forth discourse over the project. They raised their concerns. We talked about them. They listened to me and I listened to them. Although I don't think everybody at the end of the day is happy and has decided they want to support the project, I know that the discourse was very respectful. So I appreciate that. I wanted to start off by saying thank you for that. As it pertains to the presentation, I mean, what I presented to the Planning Commission in February is basically the basis for my request to approve the project. I have some additional information I wanted to include as it pertains to the single family home demand and pricing. Obviously the issues here are narrowed down to 2, traffic and density. with the majority of the residents. So a few things to note that I wanted to follow up with the Planning Commission for you to see. And then, of course, I'm available for any further questions as we move forward. But you know, we conducted a very detailed market study on this project. We have to. It's required by our construction lenders, and it's required by my investors. And John Burns is the group that did the market study for the project. And John Burns does market studies for all the major public and private builders in Southern California. And they're very well thought of, and they work with many different cities and communities. So when it comes down to the density and how many units we have to have in this project and the pricing that we need to maintain for the target buyer that we're looking for, just some important things to note that I wanted to add from last month's presentation was it's really important to note that the statistical demand for homes in the price point of 700,000 to 800,000 is almost twice as much in LA County as it is for homes priced north of 900,000. New home projects in the San Gabriel Valley with prices below Emerald Laverne, which was a very important project and part of the study, sold at twice the pace, showing a much stronger demand for the price points. And Emerald was a very important project because the builder missed the mark on this square footage of those homes, the size of those homes, and the sales price of those homes. And that project suffered greatly as a result of that. They sold almost less than 1 unit a month. Most new recent home projects, again, Emerald Laverne, had prices mostly in the 900 range and averaged less than 1 month home sale per month. Laverne has almost 75% more demand for homes priced between 700,000 and 900,000, and over 55% of buyers are looking for homes between 15 and 2,500 square feet. And I'm talking about the buyer profile that we have for this project, while only 11% are looking for homes in 2,500 to 3,500 square feet. You can go on to the next slide. And I wanted to show this graphic to you because I think it's really important. When you look at this graph and you see the numbers of the workforce within the city of Laverne and people coming in and migrating out, almost 9,000 are employed within the city of Laverne, live outside the city of Laverne, and almost 10,000 that live within Laverne are employed outside of the area of Laverne. What's really important is where those two data points cross over. And where they cross over is that only 726 people that reside within the city of Laverne live within the city of Laverne. And this is really important because what it tells us is that when they're living in the pricing in Laverne needs to be such that people within the community, we want to keep people living and working within the community. That's what fuels the environment. That's what fuels the schools. That's what fuels so much of the growth of the city. So, I mean, this is a really important metric and one that we really look to because the inflow and outflow and demand for and pricing is really important. So, you know, I think that I think that the traffic engineers on the project did a great job of preparing a presentation for the Planning Commission tonight. So I think we can move on to that, but I want you to know I'm here to answer any further questions from you or from the community as it pertains to the housing. And I hope that you will see through to approve the project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Candace, at this point, are we going to hear any more presentations from the traffic specialists before we go to public comment?
Yes.
All right.
Christine, are you ready? Christine, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, okay.
I am about to share my screen. Sorry. Oops. Let's start at the beginning. Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, great. this is, we're going to have a brief presentation. The majority of this will be on traffic. We also have, my name is Christine Donahue. I'm with Rincon Consultants, and we prepared the environmental impact report for the project, the initial, and as well as the initial study, which predated the environmental impact report, and some of the key technical analysis for the project. Also with me this evening is Brian Crawford with Gandini, who prepared the traffic impact analysis on behalf of the city. And this is our brief agenda, and we will spend the majority of our time talking about the transportation capacity study. But we thought it was useful to kind of revisit where we, how we got to where we are. Share a little bit of context in terms of recent changes in CEQA transportation analysis, why we're looking at vehicle miles traveled in addition to transportation capacity, and then a little bit of context about transportation analysis, since that's been, cumulative analysis, since that's been raised a bit. So with respect to the environmental review process, we are down here in the orange area. The city has already gone through quite a bit of the CEQA process, including beginning preparation of an initial study, preparation of a draft EIR, and input from public and agencies. There's a number of opportunities here for public input on the process and on the project, and tonight's meeting is just one of those opportunities. So in terms of project milestones, the project began in March 2020. That's when we really began the environmental review process. And unfortunately, that's also when the pandemic really kind of sunk its teeth in here, and things had to shut down. So we did pause the traffic capacity analysis, thinking that things might reopen in fall. And when it became clear that schools weren't going to reopen, things weren't really going to go back to normal in fall, we went ahead and worked with the city to develop a way for the transportation capacity analysis to go forward. This incidentally is the same issue that was being discussed across jurisdictions all over California, because while the governor did put a pause on certain things, local government agencies are still compelled to follow their environmental and land planning processes. Those were not paused by the state. So, so the city is obligated to continue to process the project. So agencies all over the state were looking at this issue and developing ways to, okay, how can we consider traffic capacity in a pandemic? How can we make this look like non-pandemic conditions? And so we'll talk a little bit about how that was done. A VMT analysis was prepared. Notice of preparation of an environmental impact report was released, along with the initial study, the project video, and information. And all of that was provided or initiated in October of 2020. Following preparation of the draft EIR that was released for a 45-day public review at the end of the year, with public review closing on February 1st, consistent with state requirements. So changes in transportation analysis. Why do we care about vehicle miles traveled? If you look at the circle here, you can see that transportation represents 47% of greenhouse gas emissions. And that is predominantly passenger car travel, as opposed to other means of travel. The government, whether it be at the federal levels or at the state level, has done a really good job of looking at how we can reduce emissions across other sectors. Industry has been the primary hit for a long time, and there's been a lot of strides there. Even in our residential, there's a lot of strides that have been made in our development code, and we have really very low GHG emissions that are coming from newly developed homes. So transportation is the emphasis, and the state's primary approach to that is infill development of housing and uses close to transit, and discouraging development in suburbs and areas that don't really have access to transit. So, and you know what this really illustrates, it's more difficult for projects to screen out of the detailed VMT analysis or to mitigate their impacts under VMT if they are distant from a transit area. Okay. Cumulative impacts. A cumulative impact is one that results from the combined effects of past, present, and reasonably foreseeable projects or activities. And those are required to be discussed in the environmental document. So our past and present projects are reflected in our existing conditions. So anything that has been built in the past would be reflected. Anything that's built recently and operating would be reflected in our existing conditions. Reasonably foreseeable future projects are evaluated. They're added to an analysis when we have something that's been approved but not built. So therefore, it would be reasonably foreseeable. The other way you can take into account reasonably foreseeable is to simply apply growth factors for every year. Every year the region experiences a certain amount of growth. That growth is tracked by your regional agencies like SCAG, for instance, Southern California Association of Governments, the Economic Development Department. They track all of those metrics. And so we're able to rely on those agencies for projecting what reasonable growth is going to be in the future based on what it's been in the past. Cumulative impacts under CEQA. The key to evaluation of cumulative impacts is the degree of a project's contribution to an adverse cumulative effect. So you can have an adverse cumulative effect, but if the project doesn't contribute a substantial amount to that, that is considered to be a less than significant effect. All right, moving on to the traffic study. And I'm going to turn this over to Brian shortly. But generally what we're going to do, we're going to talk about first how a traffic study is conducted, an overview of the approach and methodology that's used by the city to evaluate transportation capacity, considering the city-specific standards, and both the standards and the approach and methodology used for this project and for all projects in the city is very similar to how projects are evaluated throughout California. This is standard methodology that's used by professional traffic consultants throughout the state. So it's nothing unusual. There's no special circumstances here that warrant doing something different than what is considered professional practice in the industry. And after we talk about kind of the approach generally, Brian's going to get into the specifics of the project, provide an overview of the analysis and the findings. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Christine. That was excellent. So to get into this, what we're talking about now is the LOS or capacity analysis, which is separate from the VMT analysis that Christine spoke about. The VMT obviously being the CEQA document. The LOS capacity analysis is no longer acceptable under CEQA, but many jurisdictions, including Laverne, have decided to keep on analyzing LOS, a capacity analysis, because the city needs to know what's going on with our roadways and intersections. This chart here shows how we analyze roadways and intersections, kind of just like in school. You have a scale from A to F, A being free flow to best conditions, F being forced flow, which is basically when volume is exceeding capacity, which is a failure. For the city of Laverne, anything that's level of service D or better is considered acceptable. We apply the standards for not only existing conditions, but also opening year and horizon year, which again, in the city of Laverne is year 2040, which is the build out year. We can move on to the next. Okay, with our approach, what we do, and this gets more into a specific project, is we first talked with the city staff, with John and the city engineer, and talked about the project and what we'd like in the scoping agreement, what the city would like to see. After those discussions, we put together a scoping agreement that we sent to the city. The purpose of the scoping agreement is that we can lay down the foundations of what's going to be in the traffic study prior to analyzing it. That way we don't have to go back later and change major things like trip generation, distribution, intersections. And what we do with that is we compute the trip generation for the project. We use the ITE trip generation manual, ITE being Institute of Transportation Engineers. Every few years, they create a trip generation manual. They continually update it with trip generation rates for all the different various land uses. And it's basically the Bible when it comes to trip generation in all of California. It's how we compute trip generation for projects. So we put together trip generation, also put together trip distribution, put together the intersections we're going to analyze, stated how we're going to, the main contentious issue is with COVID now hitting and traffic counts not kind of being out of whack and not what they would be pre-pandemic, how we're going to account for that. So we went through that methodology, went through this different scenario analysis years we're going to analyze, put that all into a document, send it over to the city. City reviewed it, had some comments, made some changes, sent it back over. They approved it. We got going with our study. So we can move over to the next slide. This here is a City of Laverne operational traffic impact thresholds. So as Christine talked about, when you look at a project and what its impact is on the roadways, they have to meet certain thresholds for it to be a specific operational impact for the project. And you can see that those thresholds are different for signalized intersections at different levels of service. So if you have a level of service C, the incremental increase the project can add is 0.04 or more. If it goes above that, now it's an operational impact and needs to mitigate for that. And you can see here, levels of EF is 0.01 or more, so it's obviously a lot less. So when you have a more degraded intersection, the product can actually add less traffic to it to then meet that impact. That way, because the intersection is already functioning at a insufficient operational threshold, that it's more of an intersection that would need to be impacted or would need mitigation in the level service C intersection. We can move on. Okay, so here are the 7 intersections we analyzed in consultation with the city. I think everybody's aware of these so far, so I think we can move on. Here's the trip distribution that we went over and got approved with the city. And we'll talk about the traffic counts here. And, as Candace and Christine noted, we did a brand new traffic study for this project. Because of COVID, we knew that the existing traffic counts are going to be less than what they would be pre-pandemic conditions. This is universal across the board. So, as soon as the pandemic hit in March, everybody was like, what are we going to do about this? How can we go ahead and look at this and account for pre-pandemic, because we don't want to use volumes that are artificially low because of the pandemic. So what we did is we always look for historical traffic counts for the intersections we're going to analyze. Ideally, you would have those traffic counts from last year. In this case, we didn't. We had 4 intersections where we did have traffic counts from 2011. Those were most recent traffic counts. We had 3 intersections we had no historical data for whatsoever. So the city provided a traffic study that had from 2011 that had those 4 intersections. We only took the raw data, just the traffic counts from that traffic study. We then applied the Los Angeles County CMP growth rate for this region of 1.34% over that 9-year period to bring it up to what it would be in 2020 with that growth rate. We took our existing counts for our 4 intersections and we compared the 2 and saw what's the difference. And we realized that the existing counts needed to be raised by 80% during the AM peak hour and 40% by the PM peak hour to match that level. So we went ahead and did that on every intersection. Now, it's important to know with the 80% AM increase and that 40% PM increase, that was also added to every single turning movement for every single intersection. So a standard intersection is a four-legged intersection. It has 4 legs, north, south, east, west. You can turn left through or right, those 3 movements, 4 times 3, that's 12 movements. And we added them to every single leg, that growth rate. Now, for an intersection like Bradford and Amherst, Williams and Amherst, you're not expecting to see as much growth, using that sort of methodology as you would on Foothill Boulevard for the through movements, because Foothill Boulevard is an arterial, but we did it anyway as a conservative method of computing these growth rates. The Institute of Traffic Engineers actually came out a few months later with a manual that they put out for pandemic conditions, And they actually, are not the requirement, but what they requested everybody do is do the same methodology we did here. Where we take historical counts, compare them, and growth rate them up. So we feel we did the best we could do with the information we had to try to get to the pre-pandemic condition level that we think will happen, once COVID's over and back to normal. Although we don't know if it's going to be the same case, but we still got to project for that. I guess we can move to the next slide. This is the trip generation for the project. I'm sure everybody's seen this before. This is just the numbers that come straight out of ITE. So you can see you can go to the next slide. So you can see that what it does is when you put in the trip generation rates for the 43 single family units and the existing 5.5 acres of nursery, you come out to a net increase during the AM peak hour of 30 trips and 41 trips in the PM peak hour with approximately 300 total daily. And here's the existing conditions. So you can see existing, you have two intersections, Fruit at Amherst, Williams at Foothill, that are at level of service F during the peak hours. It's important to note the reason why those are at level of service F, and it's because they're cross street stop intersections. And according to the highway capacity manual methodology for analyzing a cross street stop intersection, it takes the worst individual movement at the intersection. So like I said earlier, intersection has 12 movements. It's taken the worst one, not the average of all, but just the worst. So for instance, Williams at Foothill, Foothill has 2,000 vehicles, or whatever the number is, that are going through the intersection. They have a level of service A, 0 delay, because they're uncontrolled, they're free flowing. But if you have a few movements turning out, the conflicting movements of the left turn from the minor, well, it puts a huge delay on that movement, and therefore you have a level of service F. So we can move on to the next. These are the future conditions with project. I'll just show you it's the same. Level of service remains F, obviously, for Fruit at Amherst and Williams at Foothill. The other intersections are level of service D or better. So we can move to the next. And this is year 2040. Year 2040 is basically the same instance. This is still Fs for Williams at Foothill and then Fruit at Amherst. The other thing to note when we're looking at opening year and year 2040 conditions, we're applying growth rates to the traffic counts again. So for instance, in this analysis, year 2040, we applied that 1.34% growth rate over a 20-year period compounded, which comes out to 1.31% or 31% additional growth on those already existing traffic counts that we already compounded up by 80% in the AM and 40% in the PM peak hour. And that accounts for all the cumulative traffic in the area. And that is, like Christine said, the growth rate from the LA County CMP for this city. So the next one, this is just a kind of a slide that states that, goes over the conservative evaluation of the impacts that we analyzed here in the project, and that the project itself would not adversely affect the traffic conditions for opening year or cumulative traffic conditions, which would be the year 2040 analysis. And therefore, those improvements are warranted as a result of the project specific traffic. And next. That's it, or?
That's it, yeah. So
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. I think that was a really helpful overview. I'd just like to remind everybody that there may be poor traffic conditions out there, and we understand that, we empathize. This project's contribution to those impacts matters, the degree of those impacts. We go back, when we look at the little table on the right, we do need to consider what the project's contribution is. So, and that's, the primary basis for the finding of no substantial impacts of these intersections. I did just want to remind everyone that, your city traffic engineer and your deputy city engineer is available as well, and we can talk about their role in the process if you have questions about that. And we're available for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Matt, Christine, and Brian. Appreciate the presentation. Candace, is there anything else that we want to add before I move on to public comments?
Nope, that concludes all of the information.
All right, well, thank you.
Can you stop your screen share? Thank you.
All right, we're now going to move on to public comments. I'm going to open the floor to public comments. Before we proceed, I wanted to read through. As you know, we're using a Zoom format. This is the format that's a little new to the Planning Commission. So I'm just going to go through the rules and kind of how we're set up. As I understand, we have approximately 20 participants at this point, plus or minus, depending on who decides to speak. So we want to make sure that we hear everybody, make sure that everybody has a chance to speak, and make sure that we move through this meeting and in a timely manner. So we're going to keep in mind that a lot of these points have been gone over, just like traffic studies that we just heard. So if there's additional information, we absolutely want to hear it, and frankly want to hear anything anybody has to say. But let's just keep other people's opinions, open. We'll also start by asking those on Zoom who only wish to talk with their video off to raise your hand now. So anybody who wishes to talk with their video off, raise your hand now. After these speakers, we will ask those who wish to have their video on to raise their hands. So we'll wait till those who wish to talk with their video off to raise their hands, speak, and then we'll ask again those who want to be on video to raise their hands. In order to ask a question, please use the raise hand function on Zoom that's found on the bottom of your screen. You will be brought into the room one at a time. You may need to unmute yourself as well. As there are many people, we're going to try to stick to the standard 3 minutes. We are not going to just cut someone off, but please, we'll interject if the conversation runs too long. For those who want their video on, there will be a slight lag when moving people in and out of the room. Don't worry if your screen changes when you're being moved, it will come back in a few seconds. And for those who did not register to be on the Zoom meeting by the 5 p.m. deadline, you can still participate by requesting to speak over the phone. Again, I said this at the beginning of the meeting, you just need to email planning@cityoflaverne.org and give them your name and phone number, and we will coordinate your opportunity to comment in this meeting. I believe this has given enough time for us to now hear the first speaker. And first speaker, please state your name for the record.
Sue, you're on. Please unmute yourself.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sue Geddes, resident on Pepperdine Court, 37 years. I have 4 overarching concerns. Firstly, the density is too great. The initial proposal stated 5 to 6 units per acre, which is doable. That was signed by then Mayor Kendrick, and that document exists, yet repeatedly we have been told, no, that is not a truism. Also, comparing the project to the Southerly Mobile Home Park is not an equitable comparison. The mobile home parks are rated as multi-family developments, not single-family residences. Neighborhoods to the east, west, and north are all 3 units per acre, low density, the majority of the environ of this project. Also, there are 24 houses on Amherst proper, from Williams to Fruit Street, 24. This project wants to add 42 more houses on 5.5 acres. That is a frightening statistic. Secondly, the traffic impact will be significant as stated in the EIR. The traffic study, although says a current analysis, used a 2011 study as a baseline. So we have little confidence in that. It did not take into account current patterns on Amherst, Bradford, and Bowdoin. It also miscalculated traffic in and out of the existing nursery by a sizable margin. I definitely feel an updated study is needed and warranted. Thirdly, neighborhood sovereignty. That has always historically been a core value in Laverne. It seems that that is being undermined for profit, for a debt that we, the residents of Laverne, did not create. Fourth and lastly, with all due respect, we should not be beholden to Mr. Wakens, the developer's timeline. If he cannot compromise, then perhaps we go with another bid who can. Our timeline, the residents, is a lifetime. It's our lifetime dealing with the repercussions of an overscaled design. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue. The next speaker, can you please state your name for the record?
I believe I'm on. Is that correct?
Yes, you are.
Hi, I'm Patty Latterell. I live on Nogel Circle, just off of Guava. A couple of things that have come to mind during this is that this plan development calls for not only a zoning change, but a change in the general plan as well. Those are pretty significant changes to our city. I sat on the GPAC committee when we went over the general plan when we just redid it. I know that there's property in North Laverne at the golf course that the city has absolutely determined they would never change the general plan for. So my question is, what makes this property different? Why are we so willing to change the general plan from low density to medium density without really taking too much into consideration how the neighbors feel? But the property in North Laverne, doesn't even get to begin to be spoken about. And so my question is, why? What makes this property different? And I don't know if this is a conversation or if I can just speak. So either way, I would like that somehow addressed as to how this property, why this property is so easily changed on the general plan.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Eric, do you want to address that, or Candace?
These are public comments, so I mean, I would suggest you keep a list of the questions you'd like staff to address at the end of the public comment period. Then we'll be happy to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Patty, thank you. We'll move on to the next speaker. Please state your name for the record.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, this is Matt Uboko. I live here on Pepperdine Court for 38 years. And one thing I can say is, when you live on the street, you have a better feel and understanding on everything, whether it's density or noise or whatever. And I really would like to invite the planning committee to come and visit the neighborhood, walk the street, go into that nursery and take a good look before you just accept everything that you see under glowing reports, charts, and spreadsheets. And I know the transportation did a good job on all that, but I still would like the two consultants, Christine is it, and Brian, to come down and really walk the streets. And I would be happy to come along and we can discuss intelligently. Now, one thing that I have noticed is in a lot of the documents that were made available on the website, I noticed that Matt Waken, the developer, reached out to the business community with special email encouraging their support. And I was wondering how come the neighborhood never got the same treatment. We never did. The only time I knew about the 42 units being built was a notification towards the end of the year. And I find that very strange because I thought the best interest for us is always the fiduciary role of the city. And all of a sudden, it seems like everything has been decided. And with the COVID situation, it's very easy to make this as an excuse not to have a live hearing. And so that really disturbs me because for a long time, we've been good partners with the city. And all of a sudden, that becomes a pain point for us. Now, I would like to challenge Matt Waken on his presentation earlier. He mentioned that the Emerald property had a bad forecasting and they were only selling 1 unit a month. But I like to remind you folks that the interest rate at that time was much, much higher. And I believe interest rate dictates more on a purchaser's decision than the actual price. And number two is the discussion on his presentation was always revolving around sales and marketing. What about the people? What about the residents? Why don't you talk about what's important to us? We are people, we're not things. You know, things can be replaced if they don't work, but people are people, and we have values, we have a certain lifestyle here. It was never considered. And then I saw that diagram of how many people moving in to Laverne to work and how many are leaving each day to go to work. And I find that laughable because you are not giving us the true information. You need to tell us the type of people that are leaving Laverne to work in another place. I want to know their age, what their degrees are, what they do, and where they're working and what their salaries are, okay? And the type of people that are coming in here, how did they get in here? Through buses or their own cars? And what do they do in here? Because if you look at Laverne, I see a lot of nail salon, massage center, thrift shops, and all of that. Where do you think an engineer would go other than Gilead down the street? And I know of a lot of folks here that are engineers. They go to Orange County, they go to LA. And you cannot say, hey, if we have more housing that are affordable for the people that are coming in here to work, they can live here. I don't think that's a very accurate statement. And one thing that I also noticed, and I'll be down, the draft EIR in section 6.2 called alternatives to the proposed project. I would like to ask the planning committee to really seriously look at that because there were 3 alternatives. Alternative number 2 says you should build 29 units of single family residence, which comes to a PR 4.5, and that's in section 6.2. And the third alternative was 22 units, which is PR 4. And here we're talking about PR 8. And where did that come from in the DEIR? I'm just questioning how valid are those, and are you folks paying attention to that? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to speak.
Mr. Chair, there's been a question about the video function. So I just want to be clear. If somebody wishes to participate with their video on, they'll have that opportunity once they're added to this meeting. They'll have the ability to turn their video on. At this point, nobody has that ability to turn their video on because we're still only asking questions or people to participate via audio only. So the video portion will show up and give you that opportunity once we get to that portion of this meeting. Just want to make that clear for those watching.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Next speaker, could you please state your name for the record?
Janie, you're on.
Hi, Janine Johnston. I'm just going to read my letter real quick because I got it in quite late, I think. Our family's lived on Amherst Street since 1965. And I'd like to echo the concerns of all of my neighbors regarding the proposed Amherst development. How often does everyone in a neighborhood agree on something? But here we are. As far as I know, we all would like this project to be developed with much less density than what the city and the developer have suggested. Recently, Eric Scher was quoted when he was speaking about short-term rentals in Laverne, saying, While we, quote, while we of course welcome and look forward to accommodating visitors, our first duty is to the people we serve right here in the Laverne community, unquote. I have not heard one person at the city level who has been actually concerned with our opinions on this. The way that all the reports were written, approving so glowingly of everything the developer wanted, seems really biased to me. And it feels like the city is trying to rush this project through to cover financial setbacks, other things, I don't know. And I know the city has received a petition, I'm sure others will talk about this, with over 100 signatures of people in our neighborhood who are opposed to this project. I think you can show all the charts and the graphs that you want, but bottom line, we don't want 42, and I'll say boxes that are 27 to 30 feet high on 5 acres. It just does not go in this area. There's just no way. And again, as Matt was saying, maybe, I don't know if you people have been out here to be on our street and look at the land that's being proposed. It does not go. And I just think that there's some underlying things there that are making people really try and push this through without listening to the people that no one wants this except you guys. You all want it, but we live here. We have, our families have been here for years, and we don't want it. We don't want that kind of housing development in our neighborhood. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. The next speaker, please state your name for the record.
Hector, please unmute your device. And you could go ahead.
Hector Feria. I live at 2517 Amherst. So I'm right in the corner of Amherst and Guava. And, when I heard about this whole building project, it really spooked me, because I don't know if you guys are aware. I seriously doubt any of you have been here to our stop signs. Man, people blow through here like crazy. We don't have enough police activity here to patrol.
Sir, if I could interject, it's very hard to hear you. Can you move closer to your microphone? We really want to hear what you have to say, and it's quite muffled.
Okay, I have it right in front of my face. Can you hear me?
I imagine maybe that is the best we'll get then. No, it's pretty muffled, but let's go for it. Sorry about the interruption.
Okay, I live here at 2517 Amherst, and I'm mentioning the major problem that we have right at this my corner, because I live right in the corner, where people rarely stop, or they'll just blow through the stop sign, and that's just the people right now. I could imagine what it's going to be like once construction starts and people start moving in. I myself, I totally disagree with the whole zoning. When I heard about the zoning, I heard originally that the numbers were that were being considered were a lot lower, under 5, and now we're talking about I'm moving the number of units even higher by just increasing the numbers. I would want somebody to come out here, somebody from the city, from the commission, come check it out. Stand out here for a couple of hours in the morning or in the evening and see what this is like. Again, you guys aren't here, so you guys don't see this, but the people here in Amherst, especially the ones here in the corner, like myself, we're the ones that are dealing with either people blowing through the stop sign or disgruntled people flipping you off because you look at them kind of funny because they don't stop. I mean, it's a major issue. Have you guys considered that? We don't have enough police activity. A patrol officer maybe sitting out there. I've been here for about 1.5 years, and I've probably seen a cop out here, and I work from home maybe 3-4 times. That's all I got. Anybody?
Hector, thank you for your comments. Can the next speaker please state your name for the record?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to be bringing in Patty Laurel again, but she has Denise Fisher with her, so that's who will be speaking.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, Denise is here. Hold on, let me move out of the way.
Thank you very much. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Okay, so I know I sent you guys all a letter and hopefully you had an opportunity to read it. But as I had mentioned before, and as you all know, there's obviously strong neighborhood opposition to this project. And I feel like we should postpone it and till we all can meet safely, whether it's Planning Commission and us or whomever needs to be in that meeting. But I just feel like there's so many people who oppose this. We've got over 100 signatures from neighbors that pushing this through to the city council just seems like we're not really giving a fair shot, or everybody's comments aren't in consideration. It feels like it's been going through too quickly. The other thing is, obviously, we all are saying the same thing. We're not necessarily opposed to the project. We're opposed to the amount of houses that you guys are proposing, or that the developer is proposing on this lot. And if they were able to even use the same size house, but have a larger lot size for everyone, which would go better with our neighborhoods. We have an average of about 10,000 square foot lots in our neighborhoods. And to put houses that are about 3,500 square foot lots, it does not go with our neighborhood. And you could sell those houses for a lot more. And I know that Mr. Waken mentioned that the project on the corner of Baseline and Emerald, he said that those houses were selling one a month, and I think they were selling at $1 million. I was there at one of those houses. My son-in-law was doing an open house over there, and I think the reason why those houses weren't selling is they were built right on top of the freeway. The house he was selling literally had the freeway wall at its backyard, and you couldn't hear yourself think in that backyard. And I don't know anybody who would want to spend $1 million when you've got the freeway wall at your backside. We don't have that in our neighborhood. There's a house on Amherst right now that is in escrow, and it was listed for $925,000, and there was multiple offers for $1 million. That house sold within a week, and it had multiple offers. Everything right now, and I'm sure Jason Lorge can attest to this. I know he's a realtor. Everything right now is selling for more than asking. And in our neighborhood, everything that is gone up for sale has sold within a week or two for larger than asking price. And if those houses were dropped to 30 houses on that lot and they were sold for $900,000, I was just kind of doing calculations, and that would be 27 million. Property tax generated is $337,000 a year. And if you sold 42 houses at the $700,000 that he was proposing, it generates $367,000 a year. So it's only a difference of $30,000 of property tax generated, yet you're giving the homeowner a much nicer home that they could have a backyard for their family, and it would also fit in with our neighborhood. And I know the last Planning Commission meeting, when you guys kind of were divided on how you felt about this, there was a comment saying that, you know, the developer has spent a lot of time and money on this issue, and you guys didn't want to, actually, I think it was Mr. Allison said he really didn't want to stop it because he felt like a lot of time and money was invested. But we as homeowners, we have a lot of time and money invested in our home and our neighborhood, and we're very proud of where we live, and we would like to be proud of what goes into that lot. So again, I am just asking that you guys postpone this until something is put on the table that looks like it goes a little bit better with our neighborhood the way it is. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Denise. Can the next speaker please state your name for the record?
Mr. Chair, Sue Gaddis has her hand raised again. Are you limiting this to one time, or are you allowing repeats?
How many more do we have on the non-video in line?
She would be the last one on non-video, but I don't know how many video, and we have some phone calls to make too.
Okay, so let's allow. I mean, yeah, let's let her on.
Sue, you're on again. Please unmute your mic. Sue, are you there? Perhaps she just left her hand up. I did lower it, so.
Okay. Well, if she wants to raise her hand for the video portion, that portion's coming up next, correct, Eric?
Correct.
Okay, so we can get that opportunity in the video section. Let's move on to that. And at this point, am I correct? Anybody who wants to speak via video needs to raise their hands now?
Yes, and we have a couple, so maybe I'll move them over.
Excellent. And if everybody could bear with us for just a second, this process takes a little bit of time.
Andreas, you're in the room. You need to unmute yourself and turn your video on. There we go. And unmute, please. There you go.
You guys got me?
Yep.
All right, great. I'm going to keep this kind of short because I think we've been beating the dead horses all this. I had to redo my my narrative for this, but basically it's going to come down to this. We live two homes just down the street from the project. I think the traffic report is lacking a full grasp of the situation and surrounding communities here. So like what the other callers stated, you guys really need to come in and just walk the neighborhood with us and just evaluate what's going on, especially during peak hours, because the report that came out does not match with what's going on around here. And I think you'll see that sooner than later. There's no equal comparison from single family homes, such as ones we have that are detached, as to mobile home parks. Mobile home parks are a totally different world. You cannot compare the two. There's no equal transition to that in our parcels of land here. And we have over 100 residents near the location that are against the project as presented. And many have asked us, a few of us, to carry the water for them. For one reason or another, they just don't feel like coming to public comments, speaking on video or on the phone. So we speak for them, and that's 100 residents. So with that said, we'll continue to push against the project as it is presented. And we need to have a serious and productive conversation about this. It can't be this one-time public comment, and then we're shut out, and then the other so-called experts come in and they give their way in for the project, and you give in more credence for them, and then you move on to the next meeting. It's just not working out. Last week we had a virtual meeting or webinar regarding the project, and it was really frustrating for a lot of residents. We talked about it afterwards, and they stated that they had no chance because for some reason or another, they just wanted us to ask the question and then walk off. And that's what we all felt. So with that, I asked the commission to reevaluate the plan overall, but with the input of the residents in the neighborhood. And in addition to that, I'm also requesting that we get to see the other bids that came in. I think I got to look into this more. You could probably educate me on this, but I think we could actually see those bids now because this bid, the RFP's been completed, the bid's been awarded to one person or one corporation. We should be able to see those bids now. So in closing, I just say this to support the neighborhood, support the residents here. A lot of us put a lot of money into the homes we have here. Me, myself, and my wife, we put in over $100,000 into remodeling this house. And we can't see 42 homes going into a small pocket on the street where we have 24 homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. All right. I know that Eric did state Andres's name, so we did not ask him to state his name for the record, but if the next speaker, please state your name for the record as you come on to video.
Danita, you're on. You'll need to unmute yourself and turn your video on, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Good to go.
Good evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Like Mr. Wiggins said, I too want to thank the Planning Commission for allowing us to have that special neighborhood meeting. That sends a huge message to the residents that our voice does matter and that we're not just, chimes in the wind. Unfortunately, I didn't learn anything new at that meeting. I thought it was going to be a straight Q&A session. Candace and Matt both re-presented their PowerPoint presentation, which had been the third time because they had presented it at the previous Planning Commission meeting and the previous City Council meeting. So it really cut into the time that the residents had for questions and comments. And even some residents weren't allowed because the meeting ran so long and it got late into the evening that some people just forego their opportunity to speak. I just want to say that when the residents asked the developer why they wouldn't keep to the original proposal, I included it in my letter to the Planning Commission. It's listed right here on the, I'll be close up, the staff report dated 9/16/2019. At the very bottom, it says MW Investments LLC submitted the leading proposal consisting of 5 to 6 units per acre at a bid of $5.6 million. And the secondary page said that his letter of intent was provided to the City Council at the June 3rd meeting. But if you go to the city website, which lists those meetings with the agendas and packets, there is no June 3rd meeting. There's a June 1st and a June 5th, which is an emergency meeting, and so forth. I actually took the time to go through all of the 2019 and 2020 agenda packets, and I did not find that copy of the letter of intent. I believe that should be made public record, specifically because his proposal was the one that was accepted. Going on to the housing density, as many of the other residents stated that comparing it to the mobile homes are considered multifamily units or development, not single family residential. And if you go with PR8A, they have to have a minimum lot size of 7,500 square feet, which would equal 33 units, which is what the residents are compromising for. I mean, if you were to ask any resident on this street of Amherst, they wouldn't want any houses. But I think compromising at 33 would keep with the existing landscape of the neighborhood, and it would help limit the amount of cars, because that 42 homes times 2 is 84 cars. That's almost 100 additional cars coming down the street, running the stop sign, as Hector, Mr. Feria discussed earlier. He lives right across the street from me. So from my view, I face north. My living room faces north, and I see all 3 stop signs at Guava and Amherst. And so many people run that stop sign. In the Gandini traffic report back from 2011, it does not list Amherst and Guava as an intersection part of that traffic study. Is one of the main reasons why we're requesting a new traffic study to be done, because a major intersection is not included in that report. And as you saw briefly, because Brian kind of went through that slide very quickly, how Amherst traffic already is at an F level with or without the project. So including the project is going to increase the traffic to an either higher level via F++. I really think that the city needs to consider the safety of this neighborhood. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people live in Woodburn. It's a very safe neighborhood. But with the additional amount of cars running stop signs and speeding, I really think that it could be detrimental, if not a liability to the city. Thank you for your time.
Anita, thank you. Will the next speaker please state your name for the record?
Cynthia, you'll need to turn off or unmute yourself and turn on your video.
Yep, I got it. It just popped over. Good evening, everybody. Cynthia Gabaldon, 2529 Amherst. I actually live next door to Mr. Ferreira, so I'm the one house over from the same stop sign he says that everybody's running through all the time. A couple of things to think about when it comes down to the city's mission statement. There's 3 items in there that I pulled out: quality of life, small town virtues, and teamwork. And then also when it comes to CEQA, I want to point out that CEQA actually requires environmental analysis to actually reflect a good faith effort at full disclosure. We've been talking about this over and over again. Since 2011, our street's been bringing up the traffic issues here. I'm actually an engineer, and I know that's why Cody and John are on the line tonight. But that 2011 baseline report should never have been used as a baseline report. One, it doesn't even include the a village project, which is down there at the end of Williams or Bradford. It doesn't even include that in there because that was the traffic study supposedly done for that project. It doesn't include the proposed project on Fruit, which is coming down the pike here very soon, which is right around the corner. And every person from that Fruit project must make a right turn on Amherst because they have no outlet now from their property because all the center median has now been blocked off. It doesn't include the 650 unit project, which is down at the corner of Gary and Bonita, that massive apartment building project. And the city of Laverne, I hope everybody has really looked into that about what kind of impact all those vehicles are going to do, because the closest freeway for the closest freeway off ramp for them is the 210, which is right behind our house. Everybody's going to be using this neighborhood. That 2011 traffic study also never, and this has been missed over and over again, it's never talked about Smith. So Gary to Smith to Williams is one of the major cut throughs. If you look on any of the GPS shortcut routes, everybody tells them to do that. And we went to all the homes there. We only got 3 people who told us off of Williams that they were ever notified of this project. Nobody on Smith. The whole lower half of Williams said that they were never notified. And we went door to door on that one. When it comes down to the housing element, something that I think is very interesting, and granted this is the 2014-2021 housing element, is that there's these lists of these projects that the city has over time. And there was 4 projects in particular that kind of jumped out at me because they weren't for commercial. They were actually more like this project. SP 81-2 only had 6 units per acre. SP 86-16, 4.5. SP 96-32, 4.5. SP 84-12 was 3 to 5. Taking that, why are we at 8? Why are we at 8 per acre all of a sudden? Also speaking about that, and this was already brought up, the only number I could find that was even close for that actual zoning change was that PR8A zoning sizing, and that is 7,500 square feet per lot, which again is 33 lots total for this project. But that's actually listed under the multifamily part of our housing section in our general plan. Why are we suddenly saying that this property here is transitional between low density and the mobile home park, knowing that you guys are using multifamily? In all the EIR, you guys never call it that. You guys keep saying it's single family homes, but it's not. That is not equitable. It is not equal to what is going on with the whole rest of the neighborhood. So with that, I looked in San Dimas and I looked in Claremont and I looked over in Glendora. They don't even have anything close to this when it comes down to this lot size. So what are we doing? Why is this being shoved down Amherst Street's throat, basically? A few other things that was brought up, and this was actually some items that were brought out of the EIR, is that I went through the housing element. I tried to get information on the new housing element, but this site was never ever identified as a vacant or an underutilized residential zone site. It's not on your map and it's not listed in all the APNs. Why is this suddenly the hot spot to shove 42 homes in? We don't need it. According to a very well-written housing element, we're going to be handling all of the required future housing effects for all the different levels, it's all going to be taken care of. It was a really well-written document. It looks like everything's planned out really well. Why is this suddenly this hot spot? What? And I brought up the APNs. And then when it gets down to the traffic study again, one more, maybe two more things. You guys are using the IT land use code of 818 for a nursery. And in that, it actually says it's like 19 and a half trips. And that adds up to, at least according to the graphic that was shown tonight, it said 107 trips per day. We're lucky, maybe, if there's 4 vehicles in and out of there a day. And when you actually, if you were to actually reverse that number back out of the traffic study, it completely changes everything. That really needs to be addressed. And there's nothing in CEQA that says that you absolutely have to use all of the IT numbers, because we all know what CEQA is really about. It's really supposed to be actually reflecting what is going on concerning that project and what is going on in that neighborhood. How is the neighborhood affecting that project? How is that project affecting the neighborhood? And then, even though it was already brought up in your in the draft EIR, it's actually in two places in here that alternative 3 was actually the preferred environmental project. And that's actually a lower density project. Our own draft EIR in 2 places says it. Going back to the housing element, why are we pushing this 8 units per acre? The only thing I can say is that the project concept was well received by the city at the conceptual level. But that doesn't talk about the neighborhood. That's never been brought up. Where were we in all this? And going backwards to the 2011 report, there are so many issues with that report. That they were brought up then. They were brought up when the village was built. We were at meetings. We brought it up in all of our letters. We have walked these streets in this neighborhood. We have given flyers to every neighborhood about slowing down, about stopping at Amherst, at Guava, about not blowing through the stop sign at Bradford. But for me to hear, especially as an engineer who works in very much less affluent cities, is really where I do most of my work, this would never happen like this. We would be figuring out a way to have a meeting with the neighborhood. It never would have gotten this far. Most of us didn't find out, and I put that in my letter, most of us didn't find out about this, and you guys can't see it, but hopefully you have this as an email. But I plotted, and I know it wasn't exactly what you did, so this was just for an example. I plotted where 500 feet was and where 800 feet was when it comes down to the noticing. What would have been adding 24 more people to that notice, the original notice, all the way back in October? We could have held all these conversations way back in October before the draft EIR was even done.
Thank you.
And I know that's it. It's it has been a little bit disheartening. I know that everybody's trying, but this really does feel like this is just being really shoved down our throat, and that there's a whole nother agenda going on with all this. But we do have 100 signatures in this neighborhood. Traffic is more of a problem than anybody, especially in the Public Works Department, really wants to comprehend here. We've been bringing this up for over a decade. And I totally agree with Mrs. Fisher. It's time to just slow this down, and let's really, really look at this and where to go. We get it that the city needs to sell that property. We get it. We just, putting 42 homes on it is just too much for this neighborhood. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Okay, well, the next speaker, please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I have no hands up. So we would go to the phone calls at this time.
How many phone calls do we have set right now?
Candace has that information.
There are 5.
Okay, perfect. Let's get started. Speaker, could you please state your name clearly for the record?
Gotta call him.
I imagine this will take this will take a second. Or maybe Candace, you can let us know who the first person is.
Ruth Mathias. Hi, is this Ruth? Hi, this is Candace with the City of Laverne. Are you still interested in putting your public comment for the Amherst project? Okay, I'm going to put you on right now.
Okay.
Go ahead when you're ready.
Hi. Yeah, it's Ruth Spathius, and I live on 4226 Meadow Street. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So we've lived here for 23 years.
You should turn the meeting off. Yeah.
So we've lived here for 23 years. My house, our back fence is along Amherst. So wherever that entrance is going to go into that housing complex, that's a little bit further down the street. But how I am going to be impacted is we take out our trailer and our boat. And if all the traffic that's coming through, there really isn't a lot. So my husband is able to do that. But with 100 additional cars that are going to be in that, if we're taking our boat out during a time when people are leaving to work or whatever, it's going to back those cars up. And I'm sure that's not included in your housing study. The other thing is when we initially moved here, I don't know what the zoning is like here, but our kids would have gone down all the way down to Roynan. And here, that school on Baseline is a lot closer. So I would have preferred for my kids to go to the elementary school on Baseline, but what ended up happening is I put them in a private school in Glendora. So as regards to Matt Waken's little presentation about the people that live in the city, that work in the city. So I work in healthcare, and I can tell you I have never worked in the same city that I've lived in. So I don't know how that would play into, the reasoning for this housing development. It seems like the majority of the residents here do not want the 8 units per acre. My home actually is a little larger. I have a 17,000 square foot lot, and it would impact me in regards to how I get to work and how I get home from work. And I can tell you, when I get home from work, I go down, I get off on Town, and I go through Claremont, and I come down Amherst. So that will actually impact me. And then when we take our boat out and our trailer out, it's going to impact that. The other thing that the city needs to consider is, where are those kids going to go to school? And then where is the bus stop going to be? Was that all included in your environmental impact report? And why the big push for the 42 units when it originally was just going to be the 22 units? If the city is needing the income or the revenue or whatever from the this housing project, it shouldn't be us citizens who will have to, kind of live with this, too many people in this general area. And this is the first time I've heard about the golf course in northern Laverne. We know that's a higher socioeconomic area than just down here. And if those residents do not want a big housing project up there, why should we have like a multi-housing? And that would be a big discrepancy there. I don't know if the Planning Commission are elected officials or if they're appointed, but I think the residents here do not want so many houses in such a small area. There is some housing up on, what is that street called? Blossom. And there's 24 houses on that area. And then, so 42 would seem like a lot for this little area. And then there's homes on Emerald, right across from the movie theater. And I don't think those are, there's 42 units up there. So I think whatever is put on that property, it needs to be more in line with what the original plan was. And that was, I guess, 22 units. Why the city of Laverne wants to double that is beyond me, but as for us residents, I don't think, we really don't want that. I'm sure none of you live in this general area, and if you did, I don't think you would want it either. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Ruth.
Okay, next is Cheryl, and I don't have a last name. Hi, is this Cheryl? Okay, this is Candace with the City of Laverne. Are you ready to? Oh, okay. All right, I'm gonna put you on right now. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. This is Cheryl DeGiulio, and I live on the corner of Guava and Amherst. And my family has owned this house since it was originally built in 1978. So I've seen all the comings and going around here and pretty much in the city of Laverne. And I've been listening to what my neighbors have been saying tonight, and I am definitely along with them. 42 units is way too many houses to put on the 5.6 acres in our neighborhood. And I've also been thinking about the neighboring city that I happen to work in, Claremont, for 25 years, and where they have positioned their high density housing, the projects where the houses are closer together on smaller size lots. And most of theirs seems to have been put along the general commuting street of Baseline, where they have, where you can go in and out of the property on Baseline, because that's a general commuting area to get to the on and off ramps of the freeway. But here in our neighborhood, that we're not on a main street like Foothill or something like that. We're in a community here where we have like 10,000 square feet lots, and to put that in there and then have all that traffic in our neighborhood, it would be devastating to the neighborhood. And I don't know about my neighbors at this point, but to have that done in this neighborhood after being here since 1978 would definitely push us out of this neighborhood. And we are on the northwest corner of Amherst and Guava. So we have a three-way stop here. That stop sign is, people run through it all day long. It's a huge liability for the city. And right now, even if you did a traffic study within the last year, it wouldn't be accurate because of the pandemic and everybody's staying home and working. But if the traffic study was done now, the traffic that cuts to this neighborhood from the freeway, and then, we also get all the emergency vehicles take Amherst to the mobile home parks on Bradford, and I understand that's the easiest route that they can go without all the traffic signals and worrying about the traffic and everything. But that does bring additional, vehicles through our neighborhood at a fast speed. Of course, they run the stop signs and everything because they need to get to the people in the mobile home park. So we have that going on too, And then with an additional 100 vehicles from the property, it would make this neighborhood crazy. And I think it would be a problem as far as the emergency vehicles that respond to the properties on Bradford also. So I heard my neighbor Denise speak earlier about giving more consideration to this project and seeing what else we could do as far as lowering the number of housing that goes in on that property. And I think that would be the wisest choice for the city at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, next is Liz. Hello, are you ready for public comment? Okay, just make sure you mute the video in the background so we don't hear the feedback, please. Let me know when you're ready. Yeah. Are you ready?
Okay, yes, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Arena. I live here on Amherst Street in between Williams and Bradford. I'm one of the newer residents to this area. I've been here about 2 years. And with the way this project has been going, I really do regret my choice here. This proposed project is just being shoved down our throats. I strongly feel that it's too many units for this space. I wish earlier you could have taken my video call and you could have seen the amount of traffic that comes through the street. I have listened to everyone who has said about their traffic studies, their EIRs, and that stuff that's just boring to me. You really need to come out here and take a look to see what is happening. I can't get in or out of my driveway at times because people are speeding down here. There's no other option for the people that live in this area. People are coming up from Williams, they're coming through Claremont, they're trying to get home, they're trying to get to work. We can't tolerate anymore. It's gotten out of control. I totally understand that the city needs to make money, but you have to see that Mr. Waken is not going to live here after he's done with this project. He is going to make his millions and millions of dollars, and you are going to sell us down the river to deal with what's left. And that's not fair. We need help to move on a smaller scale project. Just because it'll get the city out of the hole that someone else got us into doesn't make this project right. My move from Van Nuys to this area was to find more space, get some yard room, have some peace and quiet. Many of us feel this, but so far, nothing from what I've seen says that any of you are listening. I'm not opposed to the housing project going up. It is the amount of homes that concerns me. The lack of transparency with the citizens, traffic is already out of control on the street. I'm just hoping that you will hear us out, help us find a better solution, please. That's all for me.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Next is Jeff Allred. Hi, Jeff. It's Candace at the City of Laverne. Are you ready? All right, just make sure you mute the video in the back. Okay, here you go. All right, you're on. And he hung up. Let's try that again.
Hello.
All right, Jeff, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, members of the commission. You've heard from our residents, our neighborhood. I won't go over all the points again. Just want to just real briefly take issue with statements by the applicant. he stated that the project has always been 42 homes. He doubled down on that a couple times. That is absolutely not true. And that if you look at the third bullet on our petition before you, the city acknowledges that. It says that the applicant had provided the city with a preliminary plan early on to build these 33 homes. And then the developer said, it also was on the city website, says he wrote this: the original contemplated density was 5 to 6 dwelling units per acre, or up to 33 units. Okay, and I understand that was during the purchase of the property, but it was published on the city's website, and these are his words. So I think it's disingenuous to make the statement he's made that it's always been 42. That is not true, and that's been documented. It's also in the city's archives. You can get that information about the purchase of the property. He made those statements early on: 5 to 6 units per acre, up to 33. Number two, I take issue with the applicant's statement about, quote, meeting housing needs and market demand as his justification for increasing the number of units to 42. We can all see through that smoke screen. The real reason is money, more money for him and his company, and it's at the expense of the residents here. We just want somebody that's going to talk honestly with us and straight with us, and not just arbitrarily kick the project up to 42 units. To generate more revenue for him and his company at the expense of the residents. So we request that the council not support the proposal in the current form. Okay, that means the proposed specific plan, which is a massive rezone, the general plan amendment, not to support the EIR in this present form. You've heard all the arguments about that, and also the tentative track map, of course. But we requested that the commission take action not to support the proposal. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. All right, last one is Joe Gabaldon. Hi, is this Joe? Hi, this is Candace with the City of Laverne. Are you still interested in making public comment? Okay, I'm going to put you on right now.
Okay, thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Committee and staff, thank you for all that you do for the community and this opportunity to speak. Genuinely, I say that genuinely. I recognize that you have a difficult job and it's impossible to make everyone happy. On both sides of the equation, actually 3 sides: the city, the developer, and the citizens of this community. But that is the responsibility you chose, and now sits with you on behalf of the citizens of this community, this neighborhood. That said, quote, the traffic is bad, but the project's contribution doesn't make it significantly worse. When did our city stop its work to be better than what is minimally acceptable by state standards? What happened to Laverne standards? What happened to Laverne's quality of life? Everything that makes this project desirable to the developer and the potential homeowners that it brings. You've heard from the residents of this neighborhood. They're both citizens of Laverne and at large a part of the collective community to whom you and the City Council have promised to serve and are thus accountable to. This neighborhood has over the last 20 years asked the city for help in addressing the traffic stemming from the growth in our area in adjacent communities using Amherst as a cut-through. This is a fact. You have rejected any consideration for balancing the traffic on Amherst by reopening the boat enclosure. Over the last 20 years, we have already endured 2 significant housing projects and 1 minor one, which have cumulatively affected both our quality of life since when most in this neighborhood purchased our homes, along with the resulting traffic we have to deal with every day. Those projects, for everybody's record, are between Fruit and Williams, from Bowdoin south to the Mobile Home Park. First, the 30 homes built off Amherst in 2001, increasing the home count in our neighborhood at that time by 15%. The second was a small project in 2016 off Bradford, adding another 1% to that new number. And then a third, the Laverne Village off Foothill, with access from Bradford to Amherst and to Bowdoin onto Fruit. Those were a far greater impact, but they were not calculated in any formal study or my math. By adding this proposed project at the proposed 42 number, we would be again asked to take on an additional 18% from the current count of homes in this neighborhood. This cumulatively adds up to a difference of nearly 38% in growth in this relatively small footprint of Laverne neighborhoods over the last 20 years alone. When you consider that no values have been added to the traffic study based on the additional volume of cars from the Gary Bonita project having nearly 700 units, not to mention the 2011 study not including the Lutheran school, its weekend services, the Mormon church on Amherst and its weekend services, none of this was included in those studies. I ask every member of this committee to ask themselves, do they not believe that as water moves downhill to the 210, etc., that the traffic up Gary to Smith and across Amherst will not be impacted? Then why was it not included? Realizing that we can't do anything about that project, all that we have asked is that this project be reduced to the original number as a small measure in partnership with both the city as well as the developer to mitigate the concerns we have expressed. This neighborhood is desirable because of what we have worked hard to protect in our collective efforts. If you approve this project without change, you will be forcibly watering down our neighborhood, not yours. So we all understand the math as to who will benefit from this project. Selling the property for approximately $6 million with a projected project revenue of nearly $34 million at a potential market rate provides a cost to build margin of $28 million. Without change, who from this scenario is the greatest beneficiary of this project when the citizens of this neighborhood are left in the rearview mirror? I challenge any member of this committee to look any one of us in the eyes as you see us in passing in our community, now hearing for yourselves where many of the points or data sets presented are at least in some small measure flawed, and in the conclusions they draw, and say, that you would not have similar concerns if you lived in our neighborhood. To that, why would you allow others to do to us what you would not allow them to do to you? In conclusion, I ask for an answer to and clarification as to why the traffic from the school, its weekend services, the Mormon church, the Foothill Village, or the in-process Gary apartment project not included in previous or current traffic studies was not considered. Thank you again for this time, and I thank you for your consideration to reduce the project above all else. Good evening.
Thank you, Joe. Eric, are there any other, or Candace, are there any other?
No more calls.
No more calls?
Mr. Chair, I do have one additional Zoom attendee that is asking to ask a question who has not gone yet. So
sure,
I will bring them in. I don't know if they want video or not, but I'll give them the option if they do.
Okay, speaker, whether you have video or not, please state your name for the record.
Mr. Shahid, you will have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Just very quickly, I work for Caltrans. I'm a branch chief. I'm a civil engineer. I have done numerous development projects, city development. I have worked for planning. Right now, I work for the construction projects, which goes through cities. We are public servants, and we are paid, our salaries are paid by the public. We always take people's comments extremely carefully. For any project, even if there's one comment, we make sure that we can accommodate that somehow. Of course, not always we can do that, but we make sure we hear them. In this project, like many of us said in the last meeting, not enough public outreach was done. Forget about that 500 feet, 800 feet. I live only like 5-6 houses up on Williams, and I never knew about that project until I heard from one of my neighbors. My comment, and then I have a question, specific question too, is that yes, just like you heard from others, I have the very similar concerns. And if a redevelopment project goes in, why are you doing that at the expense of us, the people who actually live here? Why are you jeopardizing this whole setup of this neighborhood. That's one of your primary job as being one of the members in the planning community in the city of Laverne, not to disrupt a neighborhood's whole setup. The way unfortunately I have to say this, the way it appears to me that you're looking more at the manufacturer side, and that's why it appears to me that you're siding more with the developer's plans rather than listening and hearing the community. And you as city officials, appointed officials or elected, your primary job is to serve the public, the people's interest first. I just wanted to remind you, because I remind that to myself every single day that I work for Caltrans. I would appreciate if you postpone this project until there's open meetings that can be done. There's many elderly and people that live in our community who may not be well versed with the technology that you guys are using, and you can hold open meetings and be transparent and take consideration of all the comments that you receive from that neighborhood, not just that 500 feet that you talked about, from that whole neighborhood or from that setup. And then, a suitable decision can be made. We all want the betterment, the improvement of the city that we live in, of course, but not at the expense of our whole community setup. So that's my request, more not like a question, but more like my request is to postpone this project at least, so that you can have ample time to collect feedback from everybody that lives in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Candace, are there any other, or Eric, have you seen any other requests to speak?
That appears to be the end of the request to speak under public comment.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead and close the public comment, and we're going to move on to questions from the commission. Let's start with Commissioner Allison. Thomas, do you have questions, comments?
Well, I have some questions. Has any analysis been done on the home values or the impact of the home values of the surrounding neighborhood with regard to the project, both as a 5 to 6 unit per acre project and as a 7 to 8 unit per acre project?
Matt, would you like to answer that, please?
Sure. As we talked about that in the community meeting, Commissioner Allison, and what was stated was that the price per square foot of these homes will only have a positive impact on the price per square foot of the adjacent homes.
So either way, we're looking at a net economic benefit to the homes?
Yes.
What is the economic impact of the project between the 5 to 6 unit acre project that was originally accepted and the 7 to 8 unit per acre project that is being proposed?
So there's several different ways I'll answer that for you. So I'll try to give you clarity on all of it. First and foremost, I want to state that Mr. Allred's statement was not true. I met with Mr. Allred almost a year ago at the very beginning of this process. And at that time, I presented the very site plan that's before you tonight. So that's the plan that I met and showed him, and it was 42. In reference to your specific question, this site has very significant site development costs. It has a 20-foot fall from Amherst to the south portion of the property, and that's on all the engineering plans. It also had to acquire some very significant easements adjacent to it. It's got significant retaining walls, grading, utility costs. The costs to develop the site are at such a level of impact that to try to spread them down amongst 33 lots versus 42 would be significantly detrimental. And in response to the neighborhood's questions, my business is a very static business. Private and public builders are very specific on the margins of profit that they work under. We work on an 8 to 12% margin. The public builders work on the lower end of that because their cost of funds is much lower. So they work on a 10 to 12%, 8 to 10% margin because of their cost of funds. A private developer such as me works on a margin between 10 and 12%. It's static on all of our projects, and that's how we underwrite them, and that's how we evaluate them. So it's a myth that there's this unforeseen fortune in this project. It's another project that has a very static profit level to it.
And this is like maybe actually the city staff. The point was made, and let me, I guess, express my sensibilities here. Before our last vote, I went and I sat on Amherst. I went again and I sat there again. It is a beautiful neighborhood, and the spot that we're talking about is not a lot of space, right? Like, in fact, the first time I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a development miracle, right? To see an entire neighborhood go into that space. So my question is, and I guess, again, me stating my sensibilities, the city is built out and there's not going to be a lot of opportunities for developments like this one, even though much of the housing trends, much of the market, it's headed in that direction. The point was made by a resident that this scale of project is probably more appropriate on a general traffic street where I guess ingress and egress to major highways, which would be much more manageable. What's the response to that as far as why a project this size should go here where there isn't apparently some major thoroughfare or means of ingress and egress for traffic?
Well, Candace, you want to go? Can go.
I was just going to say that I think that the traffic study shows that there is not going to be a problem, and that's the point of it. Is this at this location, if there was going to be a traffic problem with LOS and the intersections and everything that was presented by Brian, then I think we would not be considering this project for this location. But the traffic shows that it's not going to be an impact.
Well, and I know, right? I know what the numbers say, right? But again, when you look at that area and you think of 42 units going in there, even if just one car is driving out, right? That is 40 additional cars during those peak moments down that street, right? And numerically, it may not be an issue, but for somebody who commutes to court in downtown LA, ingress and egress off of the freeway is a quality of life issue, right? And if it's going to take me 45 minutes to an hour to get to the 210 freeway and I live a few blocks away, then that is a significant concern that impacts why I would want to live in that particular area. Does that make sense? So like what proof do we have aside from, yeah, we've calibrated the equations to meet this pandemic, non-pandemic. There are these other things that may have been taken into consideration, not taken into consideration. What qualitative proof or evidence that these folks' livelihood by way of at least getting to and from work isn't being significantly impacted in a way that warrants reconsideration of the size of the project?
Maybe Cody or John, would you like to try this?
Sure. So understanding your point that you're trying to get across, with the traffic study, we have to rely on quantitative data. And so as you noted, there's all the counts. Given that COVID sort of changed the process, as Brian mentioned, obviously ITE came out after the fact, but was in concurrence with their approach. So we have to rely on the quantitative data to develop
Okay. And I guess this is my last question for now. Mr. Wakin, you talked about the cost margin, and I get it, the location, all that stuff, very expensive project. And then spreading that over units is going to result in a higher price per unit. Get it. What's the margin difference between the 42 units per acre and the 33 units per acre for the project?
Oh, it creates, if I was to have to go down to 33, the only option I would have would be to increase the home sizes significantly as an option. And if I had to do that, then I would price myself out of the very buyer, of the young family, first-time buyer that we're trying to look for, and quite honestly, price me potentially out of the market as a whole. I mean, the Emerald Project was just one, Commissioner Allison, of note. There is 4 or 5 different projects in San Dimas, Glendale, and Laverne that I could note that were significantly impacted by pushing their square footages on the lots and pushing their price points. So it wouldn't even be something that, to me, it would be, I would not, and I stated this to you guys in the first meeting, I would not be able to drop to 33 because the resulting factor of that, Commissioner Allison, would be that I would have to increase the home sizes to a disproportionate amount, which would, in my opinion, and my market studies opinion and the data, it wouldn't be a project that I could build.
So is it your position that 33 or a 6 unit per acre project is impossible for your firm as far as this project is concerned? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying as far as the numbers are concerned, I'm not saying 33 is impossible. Nothing's impossible, but it wouldn't work at the pricing that I'm at right now.
Okay, I'm going to pass on questions for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Allison. Commissioner May.
This time I don't have any questions.
Okay, we'll move on to Commissioner Lorge. Jason, do you have any comments?
Not so much of a question as a statement. The first-time buyer argument that's being made to support this project, I don't think is valid. In my opinion, the purchase price can't be guaranteed at what you're marketing. You don't control the purchase price, and so therefore the price is going to be whatever the price is going to be when you finish this project, and it's all based on supply and demand. And as we know, there's not enough supply, which is the main variable, though, when we're trying to compare the project on Baseline and Emerald is the interest rate. And at that time, interest rates were at 5%, and today they're at 3%. And every time you lower the interest rate by 1 point, you give a buyer 10% more purchasing power. And so to say that this project, by going down to 33, is going to be unaffordable to a first-time buyer, we're talking a 2% drop in interest rate to 3%. You're giving that buyer now the ability to purchase a home at 20% more to have that payment be the same. And so I feel like the traffic study is flawed because the number that's being spit out the backside started with the 2011 report that I feel is flawed, and a growth rate that I feel is flawed that was added to it. And so, the fact that the density is an issue, the neighbors aren't being heard in the traffic study is not flawed. And then the marketing being said that first-time buyers and the price is going to be at a certain point. There's a lot of red flags here to me. And I don't necessarily have a question, but just a kind of general statement of neighborhood sovereignty, as one of the callers mentioned, is very important to me. And making sure that we do this right, because we only have one chance to do this right. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Lorge, thank you very much. I've got a couple questions before we go back and see if Phil has anything else to discuss at the moment. But at the beginning, there were some questions raised by the residents. I thought it might be appropriate to put them out real quick here. I think Thomas started on a few of them, but there were a couple questions that were pretty basic and it might be able to be answered very quickly. One is there was a request for the other bids. Eric, maybe you could, or Bob, you could give us a statement as are those bids available? That was asked by a resident and they were told to wait till the end.
Those proposals were received in confidence when the council was initially considering the sale of the property. In my opinion, they are not public records.
Okay. Now the other question, the initial question was the general plan amendment and how that will apply to Sierra Laverne. That was one of the first questions posed by a resident. I think the statement was, council said there would never be a medium density development in Sierra Laverne. So why is there one going to be here on Amherst?
Well, what I could say is that, the current council made that statement about Sierra Laverne, right? The council can be changed and people can have different opinions. This proposal is only changing the general plan designation for the site because it has to. The zoning map and designation of the site has to match the general plan designation of the site. So when a developer asks to increase the density, the zone has to change. And so it's changing to a specific plan. That's a document that's written for this specific document, but the general plan has to match. And so the general plan amendment is simply so that the site is consistent in the general plan as it would be with the proposed specific plan. At any point, even though the council has indicated they're not supportive of development of Sierra Laverne at all, it wouldn't preclude a developer such as Matt or anybody else to come in and request a zone change and a general plan amendment for that site as well. And then the details of that proposal would be reviewed, studied environmentally by staff. There'd be a recommendation. We'd have the same meeting before the planning commission and the city council would vote on it. There's nothing that would preclude anybody from asking to change the zone of their property. There's a process, but that's kind of the difference, right? The city council identified the site as a property that they were interested in selling and did in the RFP or direct staff to put in the RFP that they were supportive of increasing the density of this site to higher than what it was, which is three units to acre, somewhere around the range of 5 to 6. That's what was in the RFP. So the city council had a different opinion at that time about this site than they did about Sierra Laverne. And that's 5 individuals with their own opinion. So I can't really speak more about the reasons behind their opinions or the way that they voted, but that's kind of the process, right? So the city council could ultimately on this project not support it or support it. That's how this process works.
All right, thank you for answering that, Eric. Just going through the list of other ones I put down, there was a reference to the staff report and a missing June 3rd meeting where there was a letter of intent that showed a letter of intent. Was there a third meeting or was that a misstatement?
Yes, it might have just been a typo. The city council also did meet in closed session on this item, I believe 2 times at least. So obviously the details of that meeting are not posted on the website. There is no documents or staff reports that are provided for closed session meetings with the city council. And so that meeting could have been a closed session meeting or the date could have been a typo. I don't know, but any public documents obviously are available for any of the public hearings where this project was discussed, which hasn't been very many up until this point.
Okay. just want to make sure we go through the other portion was, and this has to go back to the traffic study, and I think it merits just a response here where the Mormon Church, the Laverne, the apartment complexes down there off Foothill Boulevard, where the old Pearson Ford used to be, and the traffic studies did not include those. Is that something that we could have a quick response to? That was another request from one of the community members.
Yeah, I can respond to that, Jason. Regarding all three of those developments, we took existing counts at all 7 intersections, and we only use the 2011 traffic counts to determine the growth rate to apply to the 2011 to the 2020 traffic counts. We did the existing counts to account for COVID. So all that traffic volume is included in the existing counts.
Okay. I think right now I'd like to go back to the commission, see if there's any additional questions coming up from Commissioner Allison or Commissioner May.
Yeah, I have yeah, I do. So let me ask, when this plan originally came up, it was within the 5 to 6 units per acre plan, correct?
So I'll try to clarify because I know there's confusion about this. What the developer had previously said in the meetings was that the application to the planning department, the formal application filed for development, was for 42 homes, as you see today. The initial discussions with the city council and that intent letter that was referenced did indicate the 5 to 6 units. Before the application was filed with the city, however, the developer proposed back and the city council heard the reasons why the developer was proposing now to go to 42 units based on his fiscal analysis. This was prior to any application being filed with the city. It's the negotiations with the property owner. If the city wasn't the property owner, we would have never known that there was at some time a consideration of less units, because those are things that happen prior to somebody making an application with the city. So that's the distinction between the two, the confusion over this. So the city council, before the application was filed with the city, with the planning department, the city council was aware that the developer was proposing 42 homes and would be submitting an application with that number. And they decided to continue to escrow with the developer based on that plan.
Okay.
Matt, you could correct me if I got any part of that wrong, but that's my understanding of the timing of things.
No, you got that right. That's correct.
And Eric, this is I know this is going to be a weird question to probably throw at you.
I like weird
questions. What did you say?
I like weird questions.
Okay, we'll see how much you like this one. We're here to decide not for the best interest of any particular person or neighborhood, but the best interest of the city, right? There are pros here to this project that you would agree are in the best interest of the city, correct?
Staff's recommendation is to approve this project as proposed. Yes.
Okay, you're gonna give me the answer. Okay. We've heard the detriments to the neighborhood that will be experiencing and absorbing any detriments really that come or externalities that come from this project. And I guess my question is, has the city done the best it could do to balance the benefits of the project versus the externalities that it will cause the residents that are going to be absorbing them?
So I believe that the conditions of approval for the project, the mitigation measures that are part of the environmental document, ensure that the project would not have significant effect on the environment, which includes traffic, which is, I think, predominantly the most of the concerns that we've heard. Too many homes on the property and then traffic, right? So as Candace mentioned earlier, if the traffic analysis that was done said that this project would contribute significantly to traffic concerns in this neighborhood, if Amherst, which is an A rating today, except for the intersections of Fruit, which obviously that's because of the traffic on Fruit, not as much as the traffic on Amherst, but the other intersections on Amherst are at A levels today, and that's the best it can be. If this project made it go to a C or a D, a significant change, which would have to be a multitude number of units more than what's being proposed, then staff very well might have a different recommendation to the Planning Commission, because the analysis by the engineers show that the project had a detrimental effect on the neighborhood. That's just simply not the case here. So there isn't a reason that staff feels that warrant that staff would recommend denial. Now, you as planning commissioners, you have your own, you can make your decisions based on whatever factors you want to consider. There's no way that you have to decide, but as staff, we have to look at the data that's provided. We have to look at the plans, the zoning. We do understand the neighborhood. I'll say I briefly lived in this neighborhood myself a while back. That's our job, right? To look at the studies and to make a professional recommendation as professional planners. But this public hearing is for you to listen to those residents. And, and again, I'll reiterate, you guys aren't making a decision tonight besides making a recommendation onto the city council, right? No matter what's decided here, the city council ultimately has the decision to make. So they're looking for you and your roles here to make a recommendation, but ultimately the 5 members of the city council will take a vote on this, right?
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Allison. Commissioner May, do you have anything else you want to add or comment on, or at this point?
No, I think everything's been covered pretty detailed tonight and in previous meetings. I appreciate all the local residents voicing their comments and opinions, and it's good to see people participate in this process as much as they have.
Commissioner
And
Moore?
is the only action they need to take the resolution 1720?
Yes.
Right. So that's the action that's before the commission is draft resolution 1720, I believe, which makes recommendations to the city council.
Right.
I think it's 1270.
Yeah, I think the resolution 1270 sounds right, Candace. 17 sounds too high. I think there was a typo though.
Oh, okay.
I think the numbers got reversed, so I believe it is.
Okay, yeah, I've got it on screen. It says 1720. But
I know. We can still number it 1720. It doesn't really matter since that's how it's in the agenda.
no, whatever it was at the last meeting, it is now, right?
1270 is correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Lords, do you have anything else to add?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. I think at this point, all commissioners have a good understanding of where it stands. They understand the community concern. They understand the developers' limitations. And they should, I think everybody understands the city's recommendation, and I think everybody's had the time to develop their own personal opinions. I think it's probably time to entertain either a recommendation to approve resolution 1270. I'm guessing it's 1270, right? Or to deny, or what would be the term for denying resolution recommendation? Would you say denying a recommendation of resolution 1270, Eric? Or how
Hello,
about
Bob.
Or Bob? Yeah.
Well, I think first you ask if there's a motion to approve it, and if it's not approved, then it's simply not approved.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve resolution 1270?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? Okay, with no second, I think we have to look for other means of moving forward, Bob.
Well, then you're not going to have the benefit of the prepared resolution, but if you want to make a recommendation to the city council regarding the project, the zone change and a general plan amendment, then, you know, you can do that by motion. And that will be how the commission speaks to the city council.
So we would said something just for, I'm not making a motion here, but just talking it out for the benefit of the commission. If we said something about recommending approval based on the more on a PRD of 6 as opposed to 8, would that be, because that seems to be what the community is asking for and would be willing to settle with. I understand that has nothing to do with the recommendation that you have now, so it's kind of making something up. But if that's something we could reflect in the community, or is that? Or do we just not recommend approval and see if there's emotions not to recommend approval of this development based on the zoning and
Well, you could recommend to the council denial of this specific project, but then if you wanted to provide more input to the city council, perhaps you could go on and say that you would support the project at a lower density or something like that.
Okay, so entertain a motion to recommend denial of the specific project as it stands, but would be supportive of a lower density. Based on traffic concerns, COVID-related kind of concerns in the process and community involvement and community outreach.
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Well, what's the motion again?
We need a roll call vote.
That's true. Jason, do you have a question?
What's the motion again? I thought we were just talking it out. So that was the motion?
Right. The motion, as I stated, or as I presented for someone to motion for, was the denial of the specific resolution with the comment that commission would be supportive of a development in this area with a lower density.
And that's inclusive of a new traffic study too?
Yes.
No, if the project had a lower density, the existing traffic study wouldn't have to be redone. And Cody, go ahead and back me up if I'm wrong, because less homes would be less impactful. So the study that's been done is worst case scenario. So there's no additional analysis that would have to be done if there was less homes. Correct, Cody?
Yeah, Eric, you're correct. And John, is there anything else you want to add to that? Because yeah, honestly, it would be worse than what the actual proposed project, if it does go through as a lower density, would end up being.
Yeah, that's correct. The traffic analysis would have a less than significant impact based upon a lower density.
But we're making assumptions that everything being used is right. I mean, the 2011 study that we said was an issue. I mean, we're just going to continue assuming then that study's correct and that the growth rate's correct and that all the variables were taken into it. We're just going to assume that then. I mean, because there's two issues that I hear from the community, Jason, is one is the density and two is the traffic report. And so if we're doing a denial just on density, I think we're missing a big chunk of the other argument of the community.
Commissioner Lord, I'll just remind you that Cody and John are professional traffic engineers who reviewed the report and do not find fault in it. And they said it's a valid report. So those are the professionals. That's all I could offer.
And if I may add, as Brian had made comment, obviously COVID has changed a lot. ITE issued guidance on that, and Brian mentioned, and it's been mentioned prior, or in addition to that, is that the approach taken is in line with that guidance, acknowledging that this is a different situation that everybody's dealing with, but the national standard, if you will, we're in line with that.
Well, and if I can add one more thing, everybody keeps saying that the 2011 baseline numbers, the baseline numbers were not the 2011 study. The baseline numbers were, in fact, the traffic counts which were performed in August. I've been commuting on the 210 freeway for the better part of the last year, and I can tell you that the numbers in August were significant. They were not nearly as affected by the pandemic as they were in March or April. So the numbers that were counted in August, plus the growth factor, plus the 80% AM increase and the 40% PM increase, in my opinion, were actually very, very conservative.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lorch, in response to the comment that I got from you, like what my read was on the density is the density has to contribute to the traffic, and ultimately this neighborhood seems to be considered about the quality of life, and whether the traffic falls within an acceptable rate or not, double the traffic which is existing or something along those lines is still something that's going to affect their quality of life. And I think that's one of the reasons we're getting such community response, is not because it doesn't fall into, I think that every professional on this board did their best under unusual circumstances to create an effective environmental report. I just think that the density proposed is just higher than is reasonable for the community to accept, or for us to recommend, and set that hot potato in the seat of the city council. So we do have a motion. I'd leave the opportunity for, and we have a second. With everybody on the commission involved, are we ready to do a roll call for vote?
Yes, that's the next step.
Yes.
Do I have any objections from the commission for going that? Is there more discussion needed, or are we ready to vote?
I think we're ready.
Ready.
Commissioner Allison,
Aye.
Commissioner Lord,
Aye.
Commissioner May,
Aye.
and
Aye.
Chairperson Simmons.
Aye. Okay, so that, to recall, is moving our recommendation not to recommend the specific plan, but commission would be supportive of the proposal with a lesser density. That concludes the meeting, and I thank everybody for their time.
Actually, and can I make one comment? And I'm not even sure if the person's listening. I should have said this earlier. The comment was made that I was in favor of the project because of the amount of money and time that had been spent on it. And I want to correct the record that the reason I was in favor of the vote going to council the last time was because staff had in fact done everything they were required to do to get public input. And I didn't want to open the door to a precedent where staff can do everything that they have to do, and then that still be disrupted. So I want to correct the record as far as that point is made.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Allison. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for your time tonight. Thank everybody for the commitment to this issue. It's nice to see the community come together and
You'll be adjourning. You'll be adjourning to your regular April 14th meeting at 6:30 p.m.
That is correct. The next meeting will be April 14th